This is Careers Cast, a podcast for students and early career professionals who want to develop a successful and meaningful long-term career in technology. I'm your host, Marcio Saito. Hello and welcome to this episode of Careers Cast. Today we're going to talk about the difference between working for a small company or working for a large established company, and there are a lot of differences we are going to look at today. Before we go there, let me say that in my experience, it's very rare for you to be making this decision, right? A small or large company at a specific point in time. Anytime, but especially early in your career, opportunities are going to be coming at you all the time. You're going to be perceiving those opportunities and you're going to be evaluating not a decision, this or that, but you're going to make a decision, should I take this opportunity or not, right? So it is not common uh, for you to be asked to decide, right, between large and small company at a certain point in time. But this discussion is relevant and is important for you to long term, right, for you to, depending on what your preferences are, to bias your future decisions in career towards larger companies or towards small companies, right? And that might affect the way you seek knowledge, what types of skills you're going to look for, and so long term, this discussion is very relevant, and that's the goal of our discussion today, is to give you that idea what the difference is, so that you can experiment, learn, and eventually bias your decisions towards one or the other. And today I want to cover the difference between small and large companies, besides just size, right, through three different perspectives. The first one is what is really the difference? And I think the difference is if you're working for a small company, especially in technology, that company will be running out of funds provided by investors. So you need to be fast, you need to be hungry, and you need to be cost effective. And there is some risk of failure. If the company is not successful, it goes out of business. There's more higher risk there. And even if the company is successful, right, along the way, there will be multiple pivots in direction. And as the company changes, right, the employees of the company will be asked to adapt to those changes. They might need to change the way they do the work. The product might change, right, and the customers they are targeting might change over the course of the company evolution. And even within a specific point in time, right, you might be asked to perform more than one role. And maybe one day in the morning you're helping build a product, in the afternoon you're testing the product, and the next day you're training someone in sales to sell the products to the market. So the the workspace in a small startup or a small company is a lot more fluid, a lot more agile than in a large company, right? If you work for a large company, the processes are mature, the customers are known, the product is stable, changes are going to come slower, right? You're going to be part of a small team within a large organization. Your role is going to be very well defined. So when you come to work in the morning, you know what you're going to be working on. You probably know what you're going to be working on the next day and the next month. You have a lot narrower scope, but you're going to have more opportunity, both structure through training programs as well as through work, right, to get in depth in a specific domain of knowledge. So the trade-off between small company and big company is the amount of change, and the scope is going to be breadth versus depth of scope, right? And within that range, right, and a small startup, a very large company, all the shades of gray are in between. Uh, there is another, so comfort with change is the first one, right? The second one I think is, how does that correlate with our personal development, right? What are the skills we learn and we need in small and large companies? So in small companies, again, breadth is a lot more important. So being a good generalist is important. Uh, Communication is important. and you have the opportunity to learn very quickly, right? Gain a lot of visibility over multiple functions within the company, and you have a better understanding of how the company works, right, holistically. So it's a lot of breadth of knowledge. Those are the things that both you need and will learn in working for small companies. Working for a large company is exactly the mirror of that. You're going to have a very narrow scope. You have the opportunity to go deeper. And so you might need more deep technical skills in a more limited space. You're going to have less opportunity, right, to understand how the company works in general. And I think that affects the way we draw satisfaction from the work. Everyone wants their work to have impact. In a small company, you can directly see the impact of your work in the success of the company, right? So you're going to say, wow, I contributed to the success of the company in this way, and this is creating a positive impact in the marketplace, and that gives me satisfaction, right? In a larger company, you're going to do a much smaller portion of the total solution, so you draw the satisfaction from either the complexity or the scale, right, of the solution. So for example, my last corporate job was at Google. I was a director for the team responsible for the technologies in the consumer space. And so any change we made to anything, right, from individual perspective was very small. But we knew that any change we made would impact billions of users in the marketplace, right? So we drew the satisfaction from thinking, well, I do a very small portion of that, but that thing is being used by billions of people and is affecting the life of billions of people in the planet, right? So it is different, but again, work has value, right? Whether in a broad work in a small scope as well as a narrow work in a very broad scope. So, but the way you think about that is different in a small and a large company. And the last perspective to look at is financial compensation. In general, larger companies have a more stable funding revenues, right? And so they're going to be able to offer higher salaries. They are more mature companies. They'll have a more complete package of benefits compared to a small company, compared to a startup, right? So in the short term, you make more money in average working for a large company. Every company in technology, or most companies in technology, do offer company stock as a form of compensation, and it can take the form of stock options or restricted stock. If you are working in a large company, in a public company, the stock will have a certain value. That value will fluctuate depending on how successful the company is. So you can cash out by selling the stock at any, with some restrictions at any time. And then in a startup, the stock you get has no value, right? Nobody will buy that stock unless the company becomes successful and there is an exit event. An exit event is either the company is acquired by a larger company, a public company, or the company becomes public through an IPO, right? In those types of events, the payoff on the stock you own, especially if you're early in the company, might be very significant, right? So the trade-off there is predictable financial compensation in large companies and more risk, but potentially significant payoff in the long term working for a startup or a small company. Financial compensation is important over time, but especially early in the career, I suggest don't consider small differences in compensation as a parameter to decide if an opportunity is good or not, right? Early in the career, the opportunity to learn has the most value, so always optimize for learning, not for immediate compensation, particularly if you're early in your career. If the market's perfect, small company, big companies, compensation should be roughly equivalent. The trade-off is really in risk and reward, right? I hope this is useful, not only short term, as I mentioned, but in the long term of your decisions in the career. And if it was, please subscribe and share this content with your friends. And don't forget to check additional content in the channel. We have content about preparing to build a career, things like job interviews and career resumes and things like that. We talk about how companies work, what are the career paths available to you, as well as the long-term impact of technologies in the marketplace, for example. So check the channel and see you in the next episode. Bye.